Welcome to Attract and Stand Out podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Hawley, a communication expert dedicated to empowering heart-centered entrepreneurs and executive leaders to find their voice and share their message with confidence and clarity. Because clear communication is the key to a thriving business and powerful leadership. Through one-to-one coaching and interactive experiences, I help women develop practical communication tools to engage their people, build trust, and create lasting impact. Learn more about working together at darlenehawley.com/work with me. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Hawley, and I am always thrilled to be on the podcast and always excited to have a new guest. And I'm excited to talk today with Philippa Games. She has clocked over 25 years in digital marketing strategy and analytics, if I can say that. She's been a consultant with nearly 500 clients and helps them with their websites and has accumulated and generated hundreds of millions of dollars for her business and helping clients grow and succeed as well. So welcome, Philippa, to the show. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. Just to clarify, hundreds of millions of dollars cumulatively across all those clients, not just for me. Unfortunately.
I'm calling it into the universe that we're pulling millions,
That's right.
hundreds of millions of dollars to you and to me today.
Exactly.
Let's manifest a little bit of
right.
a little bit of that. Well, I'm excited to have you here. And I know that websites can be a fun topic because some people say you don't need a website in this day and age, just use social media. I'm a big believer that we need a website. It's our business card. It's the number one place that most people go to when they connect with me, whether it's at a speaking event or at a networking opportunity, or if they find me on social media, if they find a blog post that has some good old SEO in there, which is my favorite way to be found. Like, people need websites, people need that ability. But before we dive too far into websites, because I want to talk about that with you here in a minute, I want to know a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to do the work that you're doing today?
Sure. I mean, I'm hopefully, as you can hear, originally a Brit, now living in California. And when I've honestly been around for most of the history of the internet, so which is quite a long time, and which in some ways is great because I've seen a lot of different things, the things that work and the things that turned out to be bubbles and bright, shiny objects and so on. And analytics actually started quite early on. Most people weren't aware of it, but I as soon as it started to be around, there was a wonderful program that I worked with called ClickTracks, which was for small business. And it was amazing. It was so intuitive to use and so easy to use compared with, honestly, most of the tools we have today. And of course, it wasn't free. I actually knew the owner. And then unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, but then Google came along and Google invented Google Analytics, which was free. And of course, from a small business perspective, that's a much better deal. And so unfortunately, my friend sold the business and that was the end of ClickTracks. But I still remember, as you can tell, with great fondness, because I don't think there's ever been anything like it. And nowadays, we've got the AI and we've got lots of other capabilities, but just the simplicity of the interface was absolutely brilliant. So I was excited about analytics all the way along because, the power of analytics is amazing because it could tell you stuff that you can't possibly know otherwise. People will say to me, "Oh, Philippa, could you take a quick look at my website and tell me what you think?" And I could say, "Yeah, I could do that," but without the actual data of what's going on, what I think is as interesting as what you think or anybody else thinks because it's just an opinion.
Yeah.
In my case, it might be a slightly more informed opinion because of all my experience, but it's still just what I think or what I might expect to be happening. And once you have that data, you've got all sorts of insights into what's actually going on, what your visitors are actually doing, where they're going, where they're not going, what they're engaging with. And in my experience, almost always, we design a website and we think we've done a really great job and we put a lot of thought into it. And even then, people do stuff that I wasn't expecting. They do things in an order that I wasn't expecting, or content that we thought was amazing doesn't attract them, or something happens that wasn't what we expected. So this data is invaluable. And honestly, I think without it, you're really if you have a website, you're shooting in the dark with what you're doing if you're not looking at these numbers in an intelligent way.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot with my clients as a business coach about KPIs and like what are those key performance indicators? And we have to know our numbers. We need to know, are we growing? Are we getting more people, especially to our website? Those numbers are important. And if we can tweak the messaging, we can create an SEO, friendly blog post, and we can do all the things. But if we don't go back and look at the data and look at the numbers, it's hard to tell. Like, are people even getting, like, is Google even kicking it out to the people that we're trying to
Right,
call in for us?
right, absolutely. And I would push back a little. The one thing I would be really careful about with KPIs is that my philosophy is to really focus in on a few KPIs at a time. I mean, I've met people that are measuring, 30 plus KPIs at any given moment. And for while that might be interesting, the problem is what are you going to do with that? Because in my book, you shouldn't measure anything unless you're going to do something about it.
Mm,
Um, so you can't make hypotheses, can't figure out what's going on and then test for optimization and so on if you're trying to work with the 30 things at once. Because if you make a change, you don't know exactly what affected, or if you see a change, I should say, you don't know exactly what created that change because you've got so many moving parts.
yeah.
So in many ways, it's easier to say, what are our key goals now, or what is our key problem now? And let's work on that, and let's figure out the best KPIs for that. And we can monitor general stuff, obviously, like if suddenly there's a drop in sales, we need to know that. But in terms of actual strategy, less is more, I think sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to bring up because my clients only do a handful of KPIs at a time. Like we track for the year, like at the end of the year, there's definitely some things we want to look at like for the whole entire year. But what are the goals that we're searching for right now? Where are we really focusing our time and our energy? What's our visibility strategies? What's our marketing strategies? How are we putting ourselves out there? What are we
Right.
how are we showing up, especially if we're doing some marketing? We want to make sure, if one of our top marketing strategies right now is, going to networking events and connecting with people, and we're not making any coffee chats and we haven't got any prospects and we're just going and having a really good time and then we're leaving and we're coming home and then we feel good because we had a great conversation, but it's not actually transpiring into business. Like let's tweak a little bit. So I love that you mentioned like kind of like keeping it small, keeping it simple because yeah, there's so many KPIs, there's so many things that we can track,
Right.
but are we
Right.
tracking the ones that are really going to give us the leverage and the data to move us forward in a say, 90 to 120 days from now? So
Mhm.
when you think about like making sure that our analytics are good and like making sure our websites are functioning well, what are some of your favorite pieces to support clients on to help get some of the small shifts and to find maybe some quick wins in that process?
So, I mean, the thing is, you've got to be really, really clear. I mean, as we just said, about what you're trying to do. And so, and you want to dig into the actual ultimate outcomes. So, I mean, KPIs that just say, oh, look, our visitors, we've got more visitors this week than last week. I mean, the question is, does that really, so what? Right? There's always a so what. Are they the right visitors? I mean, are they converting? If not, having tons more visitors doesn't make any difference to you.
Yeah.
If they're not the right visitors, why not? What are they from the wrong kind of, a bad geographic area, like you're selling ice cream and they're from, I don't know, Wisconsin in the middle of winter. Maybe people in Wisconsin do eat ice cream in the middle of winter. I don't know, but you know what I mean. So is your targeting right? Um, and uh, what you're trying to do is to figure out how can we do things better. So you mentioned social media. I mean, I have a lot of clients who really want to use social media, and I get that. But you've got to be really careful because, in my experience, again, um, if you attract people to your website from social media, a lot of times they're not particularly high quality visitors. I mean, it does depend on how you do it. But because when they're on social media, typically they're not shopping, they're not looking necessarily to solve their problems. They're looking to chat, to be entertained, to watch funny videos. And they might see your post or your ad and think, oh, that's interesting, but it's kind of a fleeting moment. They click on it, they take a look, but that's not really where they are right now. And so again, the analytics will tell you if you've set them up properly, they'll tell you exactly which campaign somebody comes from. So if it's an Instagram post or a, whatever it is, and exactly which kind of what which specific campaign if you set up your parameters properly. And then you can see how long did those visitors spend on the site, where did they go, and whether or not therefore they were worth it to you. And honestly, unfortunately, in my experience, usually you see those visitors having very, very short visits and then just bouncing off. Um, so one of the things that I really want to do with my clients is to say, if you're going to use social media, let's make sure that we're using the right platform, because different social media platforms have different demographics, right? Different types of audience. And B, that when they come to the website, we're doing our best to really meet what they might have been thinking about when they clicked on the ad or the post, so that we can move them into the website and see if we can get some engagement.
Yeah, I think I love that you're talking about the social media piece because I 100% agree. Like from I don't think of social media actually and as a marketing tool. It's a like that it's some visibility. People might find you there. Most people are not going to be, like you said, scrolling on social media and be like, oh my gosh, where have you been my whole entire life? And then they click to your website and they purchase.
Right.
I like to think of social media as nurture because they met me somewhere else. They also are now hopefully on my newsletter list. And then most of us go to like most of the time if I'm watching somebody speak at an event, like I'm gonna find them on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and I'm gonna follow them just so I can stay in touch and kind of learn more about their process and how they support people. But I might not buy for 6 weeks or 6 years even
Right.
potentially, but I want to stay in that sphere of influence. And
So
so,
yeah, that's a great point, because so your website is probably the social media is great for the relationship building.
yeah.
The website is going to be doing the credibility piece. That's where you showcase your expertise a lot more, right? That's where you actually might be selling stuff, or you have your lead generation or whatever else is going on. So there's some different things happening. So it's important, obviously, to make sure that your messaging is consistent across the different platforms. But yeah, thinking about the different mindsets that people are in, and what I'm also trying to do is to emphasize the quality and the outcomes, because people will say to me, look, I get all these visitors from social media, and if you just look at the number of visitors, that might be true. But
Mhm.
just to remind people, what you want to do with the analytics is take it a step further and say, and what did they do? Because, like I say, if they took one look and said, oh, okay, and left, then just the fact that they came to you for a few seconds is really not that useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of my clients say similar things. They're like, "Oh, I'm either getting no traffic to my website, like nobody knows I exist."
Right.
They're like, "We hung up our shingle and we built a website, and we almost." I think a lot of people just expect like, "Oh, people are just going to find our website." And as both of us know, like we have to do a lot of visibility and marketing strategies to get people to that website. And I think you mentioned a really important piece. Like we get people there, which is awesome. But they don't always stick around for very long, or they might like check out, a blog page, or they might go to a podcast episode, or maybe they just find your homepage from an Instagram or a LinkedIn post that you
Right.
created. What do you think are some key things to really get people to stay on the page and to kind of go down the rabbit hole to actually learning more about working with you?
Well, and obviously that the most important thing is you've got to know who your customer is, or who your ideal customer is, and then what are they going to be looking for? What I mean, this is marketing. This has nothing to do with websites, right? This is basic marketing principles. I mean, it's so interesting that the internet has essentially given us many tools to be able to do marketing just better. So I like to think of a one-on-one conversation. If you have somebody in front of you who's an ideal prospect and you are having an actual face-to-face conversation, what kinds of things would you talk about? What do you think they would ask you? What would you say? Um, your website has to be able to convey that in an environment where you don't have the opportunity yet for that one-to-one. But you've got to be able to still got to be able to show people that you understand where they're coming from and what they need, and then convey how can you help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
That message is so important. Speaking
right.
to, knowing who your niche is, who your ideal customer is, making sure that your message is in alignment with what they're looking for. and then making sure that your offer is actually going to solve a problem that that person actually has.
Right. And so often, writing in a conversational tone, instead of saying, Darlene is a business, hi, I'm Darlene, it tends to, you still want to be behaving as if you're talking to people. And unless you're an incredibly professional, you mentioned you had legal firms among your clients. I don't know if they might prefer to be more kind of third party, but in general, you're thinking about creating emotional connections without the actual immediate connection. So I do think that just imagining having those conversations is really helpful.
Yeah, especially like we just want to have conversations. It's just a conversation. It doesn't have to feel like this like really polished, professional. And I mean,
Right.
there's a time and a place, and definitely like your professional bio is going to sound polished, but I want it to feel like when somebody comes to my website, they go to my story page, like they get to know a little bit about me, who I am, some of my life experiences, what I've gone through, because there's a piece to it. Like, and I talk a ton about storytelling. I use storytelling in everything that I
Hmm.
teach with my clients because I think that's like that's the heartstrings that connects people together. People pay attention when you share a story. They lean in,
Right.
they get curious. They might not
Yes.
see themselves exactly in your story in that moment, but they're thinking like, oh yeah, I remember when I started my business and this thing happened, or oh yeah, I've totally had that moment where, I was at a networking event and I verbally vomited all over the person I was talking to because I said so much and they were like, I got to get out of here. Like
Right.
but we connect in those story ways. And so
And
I
video actually of you telling stories is also video, something where you actually appear. And I'm a cobbler's child here because I still have to do that for my website. Um, where so you actually appear and you, especially if you're in the sort of business that, for example, you're in, where it's a one-to-one relationship. You're a coach, right? So if they hire you to coach them, who are they going to meet? Who are they going to be interacting with? And to be able to actually see that as well as having the words on the page. I think it's very powerful.
yeah. Yeah, I remember this was probably back in like 2019, maybe 2020, and I was talking with somebody and I had met them virtually. We had a virtual friendship. The
Mhm.
pandemic kind of happened, and then we got a chance to meet in person. And I think the best compliment I got during that conversation when we were in person was like, I feel like I already know you, and I didn't skip a beat. Like the only thing I didn't know was like exactly how tall you were going to be compared to me. But because I've listened to your podcast, because I've seen you on your YouTube videos, because we've had a virtual conversation and networked together bbefore, you're
Mhm.
actually the same person. You're not
Right,
somebody different. And I think it's so important because we put on a facade, or we wear a mask, we
right,
show ourselves the way that we think people want to see us. And then when we meet in person, sometimes you get somebody totally different. So how do we
right,
make that seamless from the first time they visit our website to the time that they meet us in person or they see us speak on stage? You're
right.
like you're actually who you say you are. You're not somebody totally different, or
Yeah.
you didn't create
And
something fake.
and isn't the internet amazing in that? I mean, I am currently writing my second book, and my editor, who persuaded me to write the book, is actually in Australia, and I met him while talking about potentially doing a podcast with him. And he's in Australia. I love working with him. Am I ever going to meet him face to face? I don't know, but the internet allows you to do all sorts of amazing things now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty cool to have clients in different countries and different cities and still
Hmm.
be able to feel like you can support and show up and give the value that you need to. And
Right.
some of my best friends are virtual. Some of my best friends in business I don't ever get to see, or maybe I get to see them once in a blue moon. And then
Right.
like I don't have, I don't even have as many close local connections as I do virtual connections. And I think it's funny
Right.
because when I started my business almost 19 years ago, I would say the first 9 to 10 years of my business was 100% on the ground networking. I used to live in Las Vegas,
Hmm.
Nevada, and I built my business on the ground. Didn't
Yep.
even have, I mean, I had a website. It was very clunky. It's kind of hysterical when I think back to what was even on there. And then when we moved to Southern California for my husband's work, the kids were little. And so I'm like, how am I gonna like grow my business? I didn't really have an opportunity. My husband was working like an hour away, and I was like, I can't get out as often as I used to. I don't have
Hmm.
family here. I don't have the support structure. And so I had to pretty much recreate my business. And I had
Right.
some colleagues who were like, "Oh, we're coaching, we're telecoaching, and so we're doing phone calls, and we're doing stuff on the internet and like Zoom calls and all these different things. And so I learned about this whole new world. Thank goodness I did before the pandemic even happened because I was already running my business virtually at that point. But it was pretty magical
Hmm.
how I started getting clients in different cities and doing all these different things. And if you would have asked me when I started my business, I would have thought I had to only work with Las Vegas people because that's
Right.
just all I knew
Right.
at the time. And then
Absolutely.
it opened
Yeah.
up my eyes, this huge horizon where I can have clients everywhere.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, what are some things in your business that are coming up for you? Tell us a little bit about like what you're up to and how you're supporting clients.
Well, two things. I mean, one, as I said, the big thing happening for me is that I'm writing a book. I'm
Yeah.
hoping to very, very soon see a proof copy that I can send
Yay.
out to get endorsements
That's
and stuff. Because I
exciting.
mean, it's written, um, and that book I hope is unique. I mean, I'm writing a book that's aimed at business owners, so the people hopefully listening to this podcast, um, who may not yet be making full use of analytics, or even know much about it at all, but who find the whole concept of data. And when you log into an analytics tool, you just get overwhelmed with charts and graphs and stuff, and that's overwhelming. And I get that. But as I said earlier, I think that if you're not thinking about analytics or talking to somebody who can do it for you, but in an intelligent way, that you're shooting in the dark. So my book is aimed at helping business owners in a totally non-techie way to understand what analytics can do and how they should think. So what kinds of things they should think about, so that if they don't want to do it themselves, but they want to hire somebody or work with somebody, that they know how to talk to that person and what they should really be hearing from them. Because unfortunately, I also come across, quite some agencies are really good at it, for example, and some will simply say, "Oh, look, you got more visitors than you did last week," and leave it at that. And the business owner honestly doesn't know much better, so just says, "Oh, great, then we're doing it right." And I want to get beyond that. So, and my book is, like you talked about stories. It's full of stories of things that we've discovered using analytics that we couldn't otherwise have known. That's either helped us to literally grow the business. I mean, create new products, find new target markets, or stop wasting money on stuff that clearly isn't working, but we didn't realize it wasn't working.
Mm,
Um, and I don't think there's anything on the market like this right now, because most of the material on data and analytics is about that. It's about data and analytics. It's technical. It's about how to use the tools and so on. My philosophy is the business owner doesn't need to know what a custom dimension is, right? I do, because that's my job to help them. I need to know that stuff, they don't, but they need to know what they need to do to run their business better.
I love that you mentioned like you're writing it in a non-techie way because I think most people, myself even included, as well as my clients, like when I think back to like conversations about analytics, I almost like glaze over a little bit. I'm like like when I get in there, the numbers can be overwhelming, or when I'm teaching my clients like how to go in and check those things and look to see like are they actually even getting website traffic? Where are they coming into? It can be scary, especially if
Right,
it's not something that you've studied or it's not something that you're really knowledgeable. And most
right,
of us are so busy running the business. We look at
right.
analytics, we get overwhelmed, our eyes glaze over, and then we're like, we'll come back to that later. We'll come look at that next week or next
Absolutely.
month.
And this book is for them because there's nothing in it that's technical. There's no charts.
Perfect.
But I remember years ago, I remember sitting with my accountant in the days when, you used to sit with your accountant while they did your tax return.
Yeah.
And he couldn't make my tax return reconcile. And he spent about 10 minutes figuring out what was going on. And finally he got it. And he was all excited. And he said, I figured it, I got it, I got it. Do you want to know what I found? And I said, no, just tell me if I owe anything. It was like,
Like, just tell
so
me that you found money that you're giving back to me this
or
year.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I don't want to know how you did it. And that's my point in this book, right? You don't
Yeah.
need to know how I'm doing it. What you do need to know is what you need to know and what's important and
Yeah.
what you need to make sure that I'm doing right.
Yeah. Because you're the expert. I don't have to be
So,
the
yeah,
expert if you're the expert.
exactly. And people say, well, have you ever worked with my industry before? And you probably get this too. And the
Hmm.
answer to that, again, I think is it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
because you're the expert in your business and I expect you to give me your expertise so that I can do what I do.
Yeah.
But when we put my expertise together with yours, then we've got something that we can use. I mean, I would imagine you're probably in a similar position, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The systems and the framework that I teach works for any type of business.
Right.
Doesn't matter what industry you're in, as long as you're wanting to grow a business and you're going to show up consistently and you want to make some income, I'm going to show you all the steps to build your brand and get your marketing and visibility and sales strategies in place. And
Right.
so, yeah, like my
Right.
clients are so diverse from, whether they're attorneys, like I was saying before we hopped on the call, all the way up to, brick and mortar wellness clinics. Like
Hmm.
there's different things that we can do and different ways that we can show up, but the systems and the tools that we use are
Right.
universal across the board.
Right. Right. And you've had experience from other industries that sometimes you can bring that give ideas that maybe they wouldn't have.
Mhm.
So I think there's an advantage sometimes to working across a wide range of industries.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I was just talking with a client a couple weeks ago, and she was watching what was happening in her industry in her town. And I always tell her like stay in our lane, like put up your visor, like put on your blinders almost, because sometimes we watch too closely what people in our own industry are doing, and we start to sound like them. We start to
Right.
emulate some of the ways that they're marketing and the ways that they're showing up. And then we start to blend in too much, and there's not a big differentiator at that moment. I love to have
Hmm.
my clients watch a totally random industry and
Yeah.
like, what are they doing? How
Yeah.
are they showing up? What
Yeah.
types of things are they talking about? And then bring that to your industry, because then all of a sudden you stand out and you're creating different types of content and you're showing up in different ways. So when people find you, whether it's on social media or heading to your website, they see a difference and they're like, "Ooh, this person gets me. They see me."
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
like how they're showing up. And that's what helps you attract and stand out in the market space.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I love this conversation. Before we start to wrap up, I would love if we do some rapid fire questions and just get to know you a little bit better.
Uh-oh.
So, Philippa, if you could go anywhere in the world and travel there today, if I could buy you a ticket, where would you go and why?
Switzerland. That's
Switzerland?
easy. Well, I love Switzerland. I just love being out I'm talking about in the Alps specifically. Just
Yeah.
my favorite thing to be is out in the fresh air, walking in the mountains, smelling the flowers, and hopefully with a fun walking dog.
I love it. Yeah, I have not been there, so I will add that to my bucket list with you. We should plan a
Hmm.
trip.
Well, that was an easy question. Good.
They're not hard. So when you are maybe a little overwhelmed or a little tired and exhausted, what are some things you like to do to reset, reflect, and recharge?
Sorry, same answer. Go for a walk with my dog.
Go for a walk with
And
your
we're
dog.
lucky, we live in an area that's on the edge of a state forest. So, the scary thing about that is it's subject to fires, so we have to be on the alert. But the plus side, obviously, is plenty of very nice walking.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing better than getting outdoors in nature. My family does a lot of desert dry camping. We go out to the middle
Mhm.
of the desert, and my family rides quads and dirt bikes. I don't. I stay back and I'm a dirt bunny. I keep the
Right.
fort down at the camp, but there's something magical about just waking up and walking outside and just like the
Yeah.
fresh air and hanging out by the campfire in the evenings when it's, pitch
Hmm.
black and there's millions of stars in the air that we don't get to see when we're living in the city all the time. And then we go
Right.
to the cabins, usually once a year in the winter
Right.
out to like Lake Arrowhead, Big Bear area. And the air just has a different smell to it. It has a
Yeah.
different feel. It
Yeah.
fills me up in those moments
Yeah.
as well. So I can see how where you live, would be the same for you.
Hmm.
And I'm curious, other than your own book, are you reading any books right now or binge watching anything on Netflix?
Oh gosh. I I yes. Well, I, I actually I'm reading a workout book. Um, so I'm realizing that I need to strengthen my bone density. So I mean, sometimes you read a book because you actually need to figure out what to do differently. So I am actually reading what's the best sort of strength exercising to do, and how do you do that safely? Because we don't have any good exercise classes that are immediately accessible. So that's a kind of a serious answer. I don't know if you were expecting that, but
Yeah, no, I love that.
um,
Especially, I was just talking. I feel like I'm perimenopausal. I'll admit it
right.
to all of my friends here. And we were just talking about like how our bodies are changing and like weightlifting keeps coming up in a lot of different
Hmm.
spaces. Maybe it's the women I share space with. They're in similar age
Right.
groups. And I've heard probably like 5 to 6 times in the past like 2 weeks about like weight resistance and I do Pilates and I walk probably 3 to 5 times a week as well. But I was like, I think I need to add some weight training in there. So I love that you
Well, I'll tell you
added that to me again as well.
what I'm doing that might be immediate helpful to see. I mean, I was told that, so I have a dog, I walk the dog, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm strapping on a rucksack when I walk the dog with about, I think, 10 to 12% of my body weight in it. Because apparently that's really, really good for your core strength
Yeah.
while you're walking. And for people like me that I don't want to take bone density drugs unless I absolutely have to. Apparently that's a really great way to tell your bones to wake up.
I
So
love it. I will
that's what
have
I'm
to look into
doing.
that.
Hmm.
I hadn't thought about that one. I'm like, I feel like I just got out of the season. My youngest is actually his birthday, the day that we're recording this is his
Hmm.
birthday. And I used to carry the kids around all the time. So I felt like I
Right.
used to carry like endless pounds of weight. And I don't do
Hmm.
that anymore. They're bigger than I am almost. So
Well, but see, I was working with hand weights, and they said, oh, well, that's okay, but that only really helps your wrists, and it can put undue stress on your shoulders. Whereas if you're wearing a pack, then it's the weight is centered in the core of your body and on your
yeah,
back, and it's much better for you all round, and it builds muscle as well, and it burns more calories. So,
yeah, super interesting. I will check it out. I always
and
love,
it's low cost, very
yeah,
low cost.
nothing better than that one. Well, Philippa, thank you so much for being on the podcast. My last question for you is, what does it mean for you to attract and stand out, which is the name of our podcast? When you think about attracting and stand out, what comes up for you?
For myself or
Yeah,
from I mean, like I said, I right now I'm really wanting to help smaller businesses or businesses that don't have their own resident analysts, big stuff, big kind of technical crew on that side, to really understand how really good strategy and analytics can make a huge transformational difference.
yeah,
And I'm really concerned about all the technical stuff that's out there. And so I really am trying to when the book comes out, make a name for it because it's not technical, but it's in business strategy terms.
mm,
And it asks business strategy questions that then relate back to, okay, how do we figure this out? But the key question being, what do I need to do to run my business better? So I'm really hoping that this business makes a splash. The book, sorry, makes a splash.
yeah,
Um, and that because my editor's in Australia, I can make a splash down under as well. So
yeah.
that
I
will be
love
really good.
it.
Actually, I guess Australia isn't down under. When I grew up in Britain, right? So if we talked about down under, right? Because Australia is kind of the other side, right? But I keep getting used to the fact that that's not the case when you're in the US.
Mhm.
So maybe it's not down under here. I don't know.
I still consider it down under. So maybe it's because we hear that phrase maybe in the movies and different places like that. So we
Right.
just assumed like it sounds like something somebody would say in Australia. So
Well, no, it's because, on the if you're watching a kid on the beach in England and they start digging a hole, right? When kids start saying, right, I'm going to dig and dig and dig and dig and
yeah,
dig, and you go, what, are you trying to get to Australia?
yeah.
But that wouldn't work here.
It wouldn't. I think they say China here. I think when I was a kid,
Yeah,
parents would say, "Oh, I'm like, were you digging a hole to China? Where are you going?"
right, right, right.
I don't even
Yeah.
know if I don't think I've ever looked at the map to see exactly
Mhm.
where we would dig to if we went straight down the core.
Right.
Philippa, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I know people want to grab your book and they're going to want to connect with you so that when it releases, they're able to do that. Can you tell people how to find you?
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll put this in the show notes. My website is websitesthatwin.com. Happy to offer discovery calls to anybody that just wants to chat. And I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only person in the world with my name, so it's pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn, and I am happy to connect with people. And also, I do have on my website an ebook, which you can also get off of LinkedIn, which is 5 stories of things that my clients and I have found in analytics that we couldn't have otherwise known, and how that allowed us to make a big difference to their businesses. And again, either stopping wasting resources or growing their products or their markets. And again, no pie charts, no techie, just stories that my goal is to get you thinking, well, maybe we've got something going on like that we should investigate.
I love that. Yes, go and grab that information. We're definitely going to grab the book. When is the book? Do you have kind of a tentative date for when the book is going to be launched? So if someone's
I'm not
listening,
sure yet. Hopefully
okay.
second quarter. Yeah,
So
but you know,
coming up not too far from now. So definitely
not
stay
too far.
in
Yeah,
touch.
yeah.
Connect on LinkedIn or head over to her website and connect so that when it drops, I know I want to get my hands on it. We can all use all the analytic knowledge out there. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been so fun.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
that's a wrap then for another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. Don't forget, new episodes drop twice a month. So make sure you subscribe to your favorite platform. And if you want to stay in the loop and never miss an update, head over to darlenehawley.com/standout and join my newsletter. And as always, remember, I believe in you. You're allowed to stand out. You're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.